But now let's talk with Welton Gaddy. Welton, I was fascinated and wanted to learn more about the transition that you went through. How did you go from being a fundamentalist Southern Baptist who really believed that folks of other religions were damned to becoming a person who fights for religious liberty? What were the things that changed and shaped you?
Well, the first thing is I had parents who loved me and trusted me and were willing for me to go where a search took me and loved me wherever I came out. In the historic Baptist tradition, religious freedom has always been primal.
Right, that's been your roots in history. But
and it's changed. It's changed among some people who now call themselves Baptists, and whether they identify with that tradition or not. I had good teachers. I can't ever say enough about the importance of those formative years, both in Sunday school and then in university. I had great teachers, and they were willing, again, as my parents, to trust the process of learning and to not be afraid of truth wherever it was found. I went through the trauma of the takeover of the Southern Baptist Convention by a new group of leaders who had somewhat different theology, different priorities. They rewrote the policy papers mostly.
Say more about that for our viewers. What was the change?
In the late 70s and early 80s, there was great turmoil in the Southern Baptist Convention. And what I found there, because this relates to the Interfaith Alliance, what I found there was that the same strategy used in taking over religious organizations and conventions was the strategy imposed imposed by some in trying to take over the nation, and to do so with at least theocratic tendencies. And so there was, I had never thought about doing interfaith work. The invitation to go there was a surprise. But I had seen firsthand what it's like to lose a tradition. I knew what it was like to have something that was precious to me, religious liberty, threatened by people who wanted to shape everybody by their convictions, and to use the government to impose on the nation their particular agenda. I certainly believe that legislation in our nation should reflect values, but not narrow sectarian values, values that help everybody. It's a long leap from supporting civil rights to supporting particular pieces of legislation that only one religious group happens to be interested in. And I have to say that interreligious work is the hardest work I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding work I've ever done.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. I'm fascinated by the Interfaith Alliance, and I think our viewers, many may not have heard about it. So tell us a little bit about the founding and the actual work that you're doing there on a daily basis. We'd love to know more.
The founding was about 16 years ago, 17 years ago now, and it was in the middle of Newt Gingrich's contract with America, the kind of takeover of government by a more theocratically oriented constituency. And a group of religious leaders from diverse traditions came together to form the Interfaith Alliance. Frankly, they only wanted to be a voice, saying that when someone tells you they speak for all religions, there's a good possibility they don't speak for everybody, and they don't speak for us. But when the announcement was made about the formation of the Interfaith Alliance, calls began to come in from all over the nation saying, we've got a group in our community that would like to identify with you. And so there developed from that grassroots organizations as well. When I came to the Interfaith Alliance, the primary mission was countering the religious right. But I said to those who were asking me to take that job, I don't get up in the morning to oppose something. I want to be for something. And the preservation and strengthening and defense of religious freedom in our nation is a cause worth working for.
Right.
And so we, instead of having a broad agenda, which is good for a progressive organization, if you have the money and staff and all to do it, we decided to look at the intersection of religion and politics through the lens of religious freedom, and to try to bring into a civil conversation not just members of the majority faith in the nation, but the voices of people of all religious traditions and no religious tradition.
Let me ask you, I mean, these are lofty concepts, but what are some concrete examples of things that have happened in recent history that have curtailed people's religious liberty? What are the kind of concrete things that you're working on?
Well, there are two answers to that question. After 9/11, we saw something of our membership that we had never seen before. In Denver, members of the Interfaith Alliance organized an event to go and circle the mosque in Denver and say, we are embracing you as people of this city. We don't look down on you for what has happened.
We don't stereotype you.
Right.
Yeah.
We had great rapport with the Sikh community. From the Sikh community came the first murder after 9/11 with someone thinking they were getting rid of a Muslim who would be identified with this. So we found the kind of compassion that comes from bringing different people together who really care for each other. That's one thing. In religious liberty, we are finding that there are 2 or 3 generations at least that have grown up without a real indoctrination into what religious liberty means. And the religious right actually used the phrase church-state separation in such a derogatory way that people became a little bit suspicious of it. So we've tried to say, look, I said in my remarks that freedom is religion's best friend. It's faith's best friend. The reason that this nation has such religious vitality is because we have respected each other's right to pursue different paths, and we have protected that for each other, not just ourselves. We're in a situation right now in the divisions within our nation where people are tending to look out only for themselves.
That's an excellent point. We've got a couple minutes left, Welton, so
Okay.
I want to get to this if we can. What's holding us back on this? Are people afraid? Are they unaware? Are they just apathetic to this idea of religious cooperation, of interfaith cooperation? What do you think is going on in the conversation?
Well,
right
I think there's fear. I think that those clouds of smoke from 9/11 are still in people's minds. But I also think that political leaders and religious leaders have to bear a major part of the responsibility for the divisiveness that we're finding in the nation now.
Okay.
When you take the kind of absolutism that is usually identified with religion, we have convictions, we believe this is truth, and you impose that on politics, which is an art that is forwarded by compromise, and then you do away with civil debate. And so when two people look at each other and one of them says, I'm right, you're wrong, I don't have anything that I can learn from you, if you want to listen to me, I'll talk, then that gets at the very core of our democracy, and unfortunately it has received justification from religion. It's time for the politicians and religious leaders in our nation to say, we got to work together.
And I think the viewers of our show would definitely agree with you on that. They take delight in the variety of traditions